Hello and welcome to Off the Tangent podcast with me, Zach Breen. Today my guest is Zain, Wadee. So how are you doing, Zain?
I'm good, thanks, Zach. It's early morning here. I'm in Melbourne, Australia, so feeling pretty perky. I've already been to Pilates this morning, got my customary Melbourne coffee from our local place. So hopefully energy levels are good.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, it was quite interesting because obviously I had to do it it's the end of the day for me. It's the evening. So I've had my whole day going to work, getting up. I've actually been trying to get up recently at 6 a.m. So this morning, 6 a.m. start. And it's been fun. I think I'm going from having a terrible sleep schedule to now getting up at 6. And it's, you feel better.
I'm a morning person, for sure. Even when I was your age, I got up relatively early, probably not 6, but I've never been one to lie in. I really love the mornings, and I find it's the best part of the day.
It is good. I had a flatmate last year that I lived with at uni, and he was absolutely obsessed with getting up early in the morning. Like he would get up at 5 a.m. and I'd go into the kitchen at 9, and he'd already been up for 4 hours eating croissants and having tea and stuff. So he it was quite the polar opposite to me, but he enjoyed it. So I suppose it's good.
Yeah. I mean, I on the flip side, I do struggle staying up late. So 10 p.m. is a late night for me as a result. But so there are compromises when you get up so early. But certainly sunny day, get out, have a walk. We live pretty close to the beach, so it's nice to get down, take Lola the dog for a look. She goes for a swim in the morning. So that's I really enjoy that.
That is lovely. Yeah. So I thought the way I usually start the podcast is that we'll kind of get into like your sort of background. And also, like, where are your parents from? Like, what did they do? Kind of get a picture of sort of like you as a person, because I think an upbringing of an individual kind of shows a lot of why you make the decisions you do. So do you want to tell me a little bit about, like what your parents did, where they're from, and then where you...
Yeah, sure. Yeah, happy to do so. So my parents, my mother is no longer alive. Dad still is. So I'll start with my mum. So she was born in Glasgow, in Scotland, just after the war, the Second World War. Her parents named her Irene, which is, according to them, a Greek name and means peace, to signify the end of the war. So her father had been in the Navy and came back from the war in 45, and she was born in 47. So I think she was, in their eyes, a signifier of peace. She was brought up in Glasgow, very, I think, traditional kind of Glaswegian background in the 40s and 50s. It was a fairly tough city, but I think she came out well, became a nurse, and in the early 60s then met my dad, who is originally from Johannesburg in South Africa. He moved over to study at a pretty young age. He was 16 when he came over to the UK, and the reason he travelled over or migrated to the UK for study was that, you probably know, in that period there was a regime called apartheid in South Africa, which his origins, he's what we used to classify as a South African Indian, so his heritage is Indian, and through the apartheid system, and there were a lack of educational opportunities for non-white people to go into further education, so he wasn't able to go to university there, so came over here. And initially he wanted to be a doctor. I don't think he didn't quite get the grades to go into medicine, but chose optics and became an optometrist or ophthalmic optician. During the 60s, he met my mum, and he was meant to go back to South Africa, but decided to stay. I don't think it was entirely approved of on either side at that point. It was the late 60s, early 70s, and I guess mixed marriages at that point, mixed racial marriages weren't the norm. So I think they had a relatively tough time of it as a result. But they stayed together until my mum actually passed away in 2012. But so that's my parents' background. I was born in Glasgow as well. 1972, so a long time ago now. And then when I was 5, we moved to Edinburgh with my dad's job. Not a massive relocation in comparison to, I guess, where we've ended up in Australia, but Glasgow and Edinburgh about 40 miles apart. Moved to Edinburgh when I was 5, and Edinburgh was a great city. We had a very enjoyable childhood growing up there. I would say it was anything out of the norm. A very happy family life. Just good upbringing, and did all right at school. Decided I wanted to go to university. I initially wanted to do law, and at the last minute changed my mind for some reason. Thought I'd just do more of a general arts degree, which I still regret. 30 odd years later, I still think I'm very frustrated that I didn't do law. It's one of these things. It's something that sort of interests me, and I wish I had done it. But I initially studied at Glasgow University. Did the way that the education system works there. When you go in your first year, you do 3 subjects. So I started off doing politics, history, and psychology. Then the second year, you narrow it down. You drop one of them. So I did history and politics, and then for my last 2 years, just majored in politics. So you graduated in the degree in political science. At that point, didn't really know what I wanted to do. Jobs market wasn't fantastic when I graduated in '94, so I thought maybe I'll stick around and do a little bit more education. Decided to do a master's. So I did a master's in marketing. Also stayed in Glasgow, but went to a different university to do that. Strathclyde Business School, and that was a really enjoyable course. Great course to do. Would I do marketing again? Probably not. But at the time, I enjoyed it. And then after finishing my master's there, I moved to London to work to find a job. I just I had quite a few friends who had met at university, and they were from London and encouraged me to come down and see what life was like there. So, big city. Moved down to London, and many more job opportunities. If you compare, Scotland's got a population of just over 5 million. London's got a population, I guess, if you look at Greater London, of close to 10 million. So the maths are quite clear where there's going to be more work in a city that's twice the population of the country I grew up in. So moved to London. Quite funny in terms of my job hunting. So these are the pre-internet days. So to be able to do detailed research on things that wasn't always the easiest. And I thought I was actually applying for a marketing role in an IT services company. It turned out it was an IT recruitment company. So that was how I got into the sector stroke industry that I'm still in today.
Yeah, and now you've gone on to obviously many years in the industry, and now you've gone on to become a managing director as well.
Yeah, that's right. I've been in the industry for 30 years this year. Actually, it's a long time. I first became an MD in the sector in 2011. So I'd worked my way up, did a number of different roles after starting off in marketing, and moved into more sort of corporate sales and client account management, etc. I was lucky enough to progress up the greasy pole a little bit and get an MD role. So that first one was with a company called Adecco, a Swiss-owned company, and I was there for a number of years, and really enjoyed. Had a great time working there. Was with them for just under 10 years. And then I've worked for a few other companies, and the company and the country I work in Australia, and I am the country managing director for a business called Acacium, who are a specialist healthcare and life sciences staffing company.
So do you think, imagine yourself back in probably a pub at uni when you were younger, do you think you had ambition to be up higher up in a company? Do you think that you thought back then that I want to pursue go up the corporate ladder? Do you think that was you saw as the path moving forward when you were younger like that?
I guess if I'm being really honest, Zach, I probably didn't really know how companies worked, how they were structured, the way that they operate and things get done. I always had a relative ambition to do well. But if I was talking to my younger self, would I really know what doing well meant? I probably would say no. I wasn't one of these people who thought, I want to be CEO of this company or MD of this company. It was more, I want to apply myself, do well, feel that I've achieve something, I would say. And then it kind of then once I got into the workplace and saw how things operated, I would say it developed a bit more organically from there, rather than it being me charting a course in 1992 at university of where I wanted to be and setting a path to get there.
I'm sort of curious about like being a managing director, because I mean, I mentioned to you before we started the podcast, I wanted to talk about like board of directors, because I find it quite interesting. In my head, what I envision with a board of directors, you literally have like a table of people that come to meet. They're like the leaders of the company in a way, and they just come and discuss like big picture ideas about what's going on. Do you think, I don't know if you can remember the first time you ever sat in a board meeting, were you quite nervous, would you say, the first time you entered that sort of environment? Because I think, obviously, I've been working at this company now that for 7 months, and it's like an engineering company. And when I started, I was almost like, the first day I was like, wow, it felt such a different environment going from university to suddenly like a corporate environment. It's almost like a complete switch. And everything was completely new. Obviously, you probably would have been in the company for many years before you reached like the board, but did you feel like, were you a person that would get nervous of those sort of things, or do you think that you just felt like very relaxed in that environment?
Yeah, I'd say that certainly the first few board meetings, I'd be relatively nervous, probably a little bit unclear of what the format would be, what would be covered. I would say that, however, the type of board, when you're, I say in a board meeting, there's different types of board meetings. So you're the more sort of regular ones that happen monthly are a bit more standard, and you'll be with people you work with day in, day out. So that, other than the fact that you're in a kind of slightly more formal setting in terms of how you're engaging and discussing topics, it's not like you're having to present to people who are relatively unknown, and you don't interact with them on a regular basis. So in that type of board meeting, they're generally pretty operational rather than strategic. More often be looking at the financial performance for the previous month, which is clearly pretty detailed, and you often will do that by business units. If you've got 6 business units, you'll review each. You'll talk about problems. That's usually the bit you don't normally do too much sort of like high-fiving great performance, because that's a given. You want to hopefully acknowledge and celebrate it, but it's usually more time is spent on doing a slightly deeper analysis of why is some one area significantly under its budget or its forecast. So a lot of time is spent on financial aspects, and then there can be other quite operational things. You might look at people issues or activities. So for example, if you've got a big hiring program coming on, that could be something that takes up quite a bit of time. Then you'll probably spend time looking at things that are on the horizon. So, for example, there's a legislative change that's going to impact on the company. You'll spend time working on how what the plan needs to be in place, what needs to be done outside of the meeting to ensure that the company's geared up to deal with that. So, as an example, the recent, if this is a UK context, you probably know employers' national insurance was put up. That's a significant financial burden to any company. One that they didn't know was coming. Maybe had the heads up a few weeks or months out, but you then suddenly have to change a lot of things because there's a significant cash impact on the business that you haven't anticipated coming. So you have to see how you're going to deal with that. So these meetings are I would say they're quite tactical, rarely focused on big picture stuff. These tend to be a lot less frequent. More often, maybe once a year, you might do a number of companies call an off-site session, so maybe 2 or 3 days where the team will go to a location out of the office, and that will be more focused on where do we want to go over the next 3 years? How do we get there? What do we think the market's doing? Where do we think the economy is going? What's the overlay of the economy on our sector?
When you say off-site, I'm imagining like you go into a cabin in the woods and brainstorm. Is that accurate?
Yeah, hey, not quite a cabin, but usually it will be a country hotel or a hotel in the a few times we'd gone to places in in Scotland, like, and that was probably my bias. I wanted to go back up to Scotland. We went to Loch Lomond a few times, and
Yeah.
we'd go to places where it felt nice and serene, and you could just get out of the office. Because a lot of the reason that isn't just people wanting a jolly or any sort of vanity reasons. It's because if you're in the office, you'll get distracted, and whether that's your own distractions of your own making, we think, I'll just nip down and see someone on the team and talk about this issue, or somebody will come and get you. There's too many distractions when you're in the office, and I think people also tune out of the kind of day-to-day mindset a bit more if they're away from the regular workplace. That's why people do go off-site, and generally it's nice just to get out of the city. Most people who work in an office environment work in the city, so getting to the country again just helps de-stress a bit.
Yeah, so, definitely. I think
so
those times where you kind of get away without the stress, you're right. It's almost like it unlocks the mental block, and I think it's also quite good for just mental health and stress. I wanted to talk about this. This is a bit of a tangent, but the other day I watched a documentary on cryogenics, right? And I mentioned to you I wanted to talk about this because I think it's something that not many people talk about, but I'm just interested to get your perspective on it. So for people that might not know, cryogenics is the idea that when you die, or your body is almost saved in a freezer like thing, and then in the hope that technology evolves to such a degree that you can be brought back to life in essence in however much so long. I want to delve into this topic a little bit with you and kind of get your thoughts on all the different aspects. I think a good starting point would be a deeper question, in the sense that, are you someone who is scared of death? I think me personally, I would say that I'm someone that fears death, the idea of being gone from the world. What are your beliefs on death as a concept? And it's a difficult question for you, but I'm just curious to what you think.
Yeah, it's not typically something I think about every day. I suppose as I get a bit older, I know it's coming at some stage. Am I scared of it? No, I wouldn't say I am. Do I want to die soon? No, but do I spend every day, in a state of paralysis, worrying about death? Absolutely not. No.
Are you a religious person? Would you say?
No, I would describe myself as agnostic rather than atheist. I don't follow any faith, but I equally want to remain kind of on the fence. I'm not entirely sure. Can't rule it out one way or the other. But I'm not scared of death. I'm probably more fearful of illness, and particularly a life-threatening illness. Having seen my mother die of cancer, and other people in families, is something that's impacted very heavily on her side of the family. So I would say that would be a bigger fear for me, that to see, having seen that kind of slow, painful death that can impact people with certain illnesses, that would be something that would hold more fear than just the concept of dying.
Yeah.
Living for a long time. I was actually, I think I heard the concept on a podcast the other day with, apparently people like Peter Thiel and Elon Musk, who I'm absolutely not a fan of, these people in that libertarian right are very into it. So it's not really something that interests me, and I won't be doing any reading on it. As frank, I think it's no.
Would you not? Do you think so? If you had the option to be frozen after your death, would you do it or no?
No.
How about if in a scenario where you'd mentioned that you're afraid of illness, do you think if you were, let's say, like diagnosed with something where you have like 3 months left to live, and they told you, oh, we can freeze you now, and then you have a higher chance of being able to come back to life, do you think you would do it? No. That's fair. I think so. Watching the documentary, it went to this sort of conferences where these companies were advertising like people to get like cryogenics and be cryogenically frozen. And I think that it raised loads of issues that I thought were quite interesting about all these people, their wealth, where it would go, like how they would be wealthy or have any money when they came out, or like they wouldn't know anyone, they wouldn't have any family, and all these factors. And I thought it was quite interesting, and I don't know. I don't know what I don't think I would ever do that, but I am someone that does want to extend their life. Like I try and eat healthy and exercise because I think, for me personally, like, I'm very interested in technology and the way the world is going with tech.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my degree. That's what I want to focus on. And I think I'm almost, even though I'm still young, I'm almost sad that I won't be able to see where it goes. So I think that might be one of the root causes about perhaps why I personally am afraid of death rather than necessarily illness in itself.
Yeah. I mean, I get that tech has the potential to change so much. I think I said that everything is is temporary. Things change. I definitely say don't wish your young years away. You've still got a lot of good years. Your big major years ahead of you. I would also say that the whole concept of aging has very much shifted. I'd say over the past 20 or so years. If I just comparing, I remember my grandmother, a maternal grandmother, turned 60. I thought she was ancient, and now I'm 7 years away from that age, and I really don't think I am ancient. But if I look at myself physically, health-wise, how I act, how I dress, all these types of things, I just think we're so different to whether it's our grandparents' generation or generation before them. So I think we're living a healthy life, living an active life. I think we can prolong our lives as much as possible. And clearly, who knows what the curveballs of illness, or it doesn't even have to be illness. You can die in a car crash, can't you? Like, without any. So I think there's ways that we can live well without freezing our bodies.
Definitely. There's an interesting concept. There's two ways of measuring age. You have the chronological age and biological age. So your chronological age is just your normal, however old you are now and however old I am now. And biological is you measure lots of different indicators in your body that indicate health, your health level. So this would just be a wide range of things. Once you do all these tests and get an average of these sort of indicators, you can then tell how old your body is. And I think a lot of people who are interested in like nutrition and the health scene use this indicator of how well they're doing, because you can change your biological age. You can shave off years if you weight, for example, that you can exercise and eat healthy, and then your biological age starts to recover. So I think that's quite interesting in a sense. And I think that's one way that people are looking at to almost extend life. You mentioned Peter Thiel and Elon Musk. What are your thoughts on these sorts of group of people? These people that are like technocrats in a way, that people believe that technology should be put first, and almost like what are your thoughts on these individuals?
I guess at the moment, certainly my opinions very much shifted recently with what I believe is the malevolent influence that they're having on society and the world at the moment. Yeah, has good been done through tech? Totally, absolutely. Are they innovators? Are they people who've changed the world? Yes. But why are we allowing someone like Elon Musk the influence that he has now just because he's rich and he has taken control of a platform that is allowed to basically a certain agenda to be pursued through the spreading of false information? So I think there's a real danger in them. I think there's the lack of control, the lack of accountability. Yeah, I think I'm worried about the extent to which their influence may grow further, and the decisions that they'll make because of their power and influence and money that they have, without being accountable or elected or representative of what should be a representative democracy. So yeah, I'd describe them at the moment as a force for bad rather than good right now.
I have a lot of mixed feelings around it, but I think if I was to point fingers, I feel like Donald Trump is more to blame for if I had to point at a main driving force of bad or cause of at least a lot of the negative effects, like the mistrust of institutions and the media and law and our government. I would have to point the finger at individuals like Trump, mainly because I think that it's almost like they don't believe in the truth. And the thing is with people like Elon Musk, even though he's so arrogant and he says a lot of things I disagree with, I still believe that he is a scientist and an engineer and does believe in the truth. Whereas someone like Donald Trump, it's almost like nothing has any value, nothing has any meaning. It's like one day you'll say one thing and one day the next, and it's almost like, how can someone who leads a country have so little like value on the word trust? It's almost like none at all. What are your thoughts on him and his current influence on the world? I mean, you obviously work for companies. Do the companies discuss Trump and global effects that he might have? Because I imagine being higher up in a company where you have to kind of talk about the decisions that the company's moving in and how it positions itself, would you think that companies around the world are worried about the influence of Donald Trump and the volatility that he provides into the global markets?
Yeah, I think so. Taking the sort of business stroke company side of the question first, before I sort of express any sort of personal thoughts. I think businesses probably there's probably on one side of the equation a relative positivity towards him because they feel that he's pretty pro business and very focused on the market. So if you take a recent example, he would probably deny it, but when he threatened to impose tariffs on Canada and the markets reacted negatively, so the stock markets went down significantly, he then kind of flip-flopped and said he was pausing it. He'll claim he got what he wanted. But clearly he was a bit spooked by the reaction of the market. So I think what that means is the businesses feel that he creates an environment that in general is pro-business, and therefore they like that aspect. What you'll find with most businesses, whether they're publicly quoted on a stock exchange, private equity owned, or even just privately held businesses, is they like stability, and they don't like surprises, shocks to the system, volatility. So election periods are always, particularly if it's a very unclear election like the US one last time round was that nobody really knew which way it was going to go. That creates nervousness in businesses, and often it can cause a little bit of a temporary paralysis in decision making, particularly bigger decisions, because they don't know which way the world is going to go post the election. So from a business side, the view of Trump's relatively positive. I'd say the one area that if I'm talking being in Australia, for example, people are nervous on some of the tariff discussions. I think we are probably less, in terms of our trade, less exposed to the US than a number of other countries, but nevertheless there is still that concern. So although the general feeling of business is relatively good, I think there can be a little bit of anxiety just with some of the bigger picture rhetoric around protectionist trade policies. So that's the business side. Personally, he doesn't represent the kind of politics I believe in, and I do think taking aside the detail of my views, I really do worry about the way that truth to your point is being absolutely inverted, twisted, distorted. It's something I never saw in my years when I was university or early in my career. It felt like people were at different ends of the political spectrum, but it always felt that what you were debating or what you agreed on or disagreed on was anchored in truth. But it really felt to me like stuff has shifted massively since the 2015, 2016 period, where this whole disinformation age came into being. So I suppose in history were there periods where lies were told. Yeah, absolutely. If you look at Germany in the Hitler years, that was based on propaganda and misinformation about people, and the scapegoating of a whole group of people in order to further or justify a cause or a way of doing things. So it's not that we've historically lived in a perfect world, but I think what the internet's allowed is that for that type of distortion to become so mass marketable, and it can get to people so easily, and it becomes their source of truth. They don't question it. They just think, well, this is what I read, and it must be real. And I don't think, I certainly know from Jack, my kids, that they would never watch the news. On I guess a broadcast news station like the ABC in Australia or the BBC in the UK. It would never strike them to turn that on to get information of what's happening. So the source of information is very much these quick little 2-minute things, whether it's a big call or something like that. But people believe it, and I think that's reality. So that's why I really fear. I fear that with people like Trump, and there's also this absolute terror of saying anything against him, which has been amplified this week, as you may have heard with his commentary on the situation with the war in Ukraine and Russia. And he's pretty much, well, he's not pretty much, he has stated that Ukraine caused it. Zelensky's a dictator, blah, blah, blah.
It's crazy. I know. Interestingly, I was saying this to my girlfriend earlier today, that I think part of me feels like this could be a mistake from Trump. So I think in the past he's used lies and controversy and all of these ideas to stir up emotion, stir up media attention, and keep the spotlight always on him. It's almost like it's always benefited him every single time. And every time I see something controversial from Trump, I never think, oh, this is going to be the end of him, because that's his playbook, and it's worked time and time again. The Zelensky stuff and with Ukraine is the first time where I've actually felt this, to me, is a mistake from him. It just purely from a tactical position. And the reason why I think that is because everyone in the world, almost except Russia, has been pro-Ukraine. There's not really ever been a debate. Like when you get Israel versus Gaza, there's a lot of debate to be had. Yeah. There's a lot of different sides and emotion. With Ukraine, at least from Europe and very much from America as well, all the time, and Australia as well, it's always been pro-Ukraine. There's never been a question really about that. It's always, the discussions have been, what level of support do we provide? It's never been questioning it. And I just think for years we've supported that cause, and for then Trump to almost act like we've been blind for 3 years and that Zelensky is a dictator is just so far past the truth that, to me, it's almost like this could be the wake-up call I think that some people would need. I mean, I think hopefully to me it will be a wake-up call.
It's an interesting perspective. I think first thing I would say is that in terms of the view that Ukraine is in the attack and is in the right, generally I would say that that's a Western / Northern Hemisphere, I include Australia and New Zealand view there. Listen to or read about what they call global South, and including Australian South, it wouldn't include Australia and New Zealand. There's a lot more ambivalence in places like most of Africa, India, certainly China. They're much more either pro the Russian position or on the fence, and some of that being on the fence is for business reasons, I would say, in the case of countries like India. So I think it's a sort of European and North American down to sort of Australia, New Zealand view that Ukraine is absolutely being transgressed through the actions of Putin back in 21, 22, and going back to 2014 with the first incursions into Ukraine and the taking of territory. But onto the broad, in terms of the broader point around is this an inflection point? Is this a mistake? I think it absolutely could be in how it will galvanize European opinion and hopefully prompt them to actually stand up to Trump a bit more and not just think that silence is not upsetting him is the path to take. I do hope that. I think the question that I'm not so sure of is how people feel about it in America itself. I've been to the States quite a lot. I've pretty much probably, it's mainly from work a little bit, probably always done the bits of the US that the MAGA people hate. So either the West Coast, California, or the Northeast, New York, Boston, places like that. I have once or twice been to Florida, albeit probably not the really sort of red parts of Florida than they are now. But I do, I guess, fear that Americans, and particularly Trump's base, will still they just don't give a damn about what goes on outside of the States. So yeah, he'll get castigated, whether in public or privately, by most of Europe, countries like Australia, etc. But will it really influence his base? I don't know. Yeah, I would hope it's a point. It's certainly a fundamental reversal of 80 years of post-Second World War policy and a view of what's right and what's wrong, and the view that we uphold Western-style representative democracies, not pandering or viewing the ways of a dictator like Putin as the right cause to back. So it's a big moment in history, I'd say.
Definitely. And I think as well, I mean, with Trump, there's so many directions I think it could go right now. I think that one that I've been really fascinated at the moment is whether or not Trump will try and stay longer than his term, because he's reached at the moment. This is the last term he can do. It's not by law. It's not us to do anymore.
Yeah.
But part of me feels like we're building up to the grand finale of Trump's the playbook, in essence. I think that even though I don't like Trump and I feel like he causes so much harm, I have to admire the playbook at which he plays by, because it does work for him, for his ambition. But in terms of why I think there would be his attempts to try and extend his stay, in essence, is because the day one, with all the executive orders, he's showing to the public and the American people that he gets things done. And you see that with Canada and Mexico with the threat of tariffs. And I think where things could get a bit crazy is with the Greenland and the Panama Canal and the sort of rhetoric from him about invade or taking those places. He talks about taking Panama Canal back by force, that they paid for it, it's theirs, and also having Greenland, trying to buy Greenland. And I'm not sure of how much power a president of America has, in the sense that can he declare war on a place and invade it? But to me, in times of war, stay in charge. And my fear is that all of the rhetoric, and you can see the anger which he can create. Think back to when he lost the 2020 elections, all of that, the denial by him that he lost, and the creation of the Capitol riots from his supporters. I can easily see a scaled up version of that if they were at some sort of war with invading Panama or doing something in Greenland for him to stay in power. Now that is a crazy alternate universe if we ever reach that point. But I have been thinking about it recently, because I think that if I was Trump and I was going by the Trump playbook, Trump is not someone that will easily give up power. It's just not. He's never going to be like accept that he has to give up being the top guy. And think about the people that he looks to in the world. He looks at Putin. He looks at Xi Jinping, and he looks at if they can do it, if they can stay longer. I imagine he thinks, why can't he too?
Yeah, it's certainly not out of the question that he may look to do that. And whether it's through some form of insurrection or a manufactured reason that America's deemed to be in a state where it's a crisis and it needs some radical form of leadership. Who knows? I'm probably hopeful, stroke optimistic that I think if we were talking about Donald Trump, who was 20 years younger, I'd be much more fearful of that. Age catches up on everyone. I think he'll be 82, 83, something like that. But by the time his next term, or last term, should I say, concludes, doesn't mean he'll rule it out, because for somebody that age, he still seems to have a lot of energy. But would he want to? Veering on the side of no, but you never know. But it's fear. It's fear that it's not something you'd would never have spoken about with any other president in America. So it's really disturbing that we can even discuss this as a real possibility in a country with such a strong written constitution, and a constitution that has largely been upheld for well over 250 years, pretty much. That that constitution's almost been in place. So it's worrying. The other side, I try to sort of comfort myself with, in terms of not getting too freaked out by everything. It's exhausting listening to the news cycle. I mean, he's only been back in for a month, and it just feels like it's just helter-skelter nonsense at half time. It's madness. Yeah. But one question I would put to myself and in general is, to what extent is his method of politics really institutionalized, versus is it more around the power of the character that is Donald Trump? Mm. And my view is that yes, that whole sort of deep conservatism, and a lot of people talk about the Project 25 concept, that's got quite deep roots, I think, in a number of strands of life in America.
What's the Project 25 concept? Sorry? What's the project?
It's something that Donald Trump initially denied having any knowledge of it. But it's a very, I'd say, ultra conservative, right wing. It's almost a policy agenda. So it's around it'll be things like reducing reproductive rights for women. Mm. A lot of that's already been rolled back following the repeal of Roe versus Wade. You'll have them wanting to turn that back even further. Pretty much, outlawing abortion in every state if they can. There's a very rhetoric, or not even rhetoric, policy agenda there. So some of the stuff you're seeing coming out in Trump's executive orders that should have been challenged around the denial of citizenship rights if you're born in the States. So things like so these very right wing conservative social policies are part of the agenda. Kind of anti woke, so they'll say other aspects of rolling back changes around whether it's around trans rights and diversity, etc. So it's a very, I guess it's a very intellectualized kind of thing. It's much more thought through than, say, like how Trump often, you can just get the feeling with Trump that he makes stuff up as he goes along. Whereas that's a philosophical kind of alt-right view. So so I'd say go back to the original point. I think pieces like that show that there is some attempt to institutionalize this fairly radical agenda. However, I still think that a lot of Trump is often called in political terms the power of charismatic political authority. So it's centered on one man. Mm. If I was, if you say that, compare and contrast China to the US in terms of how their regime, Xi has created a longevity for himself and changed things. But I think a lot of that was already there, and I think when he dies, will somebody else take and be able to do something similar? I'd say yes. With the US, when Trump either goes or dies, he's got people that might be exactly. But if you take someone like JD Vance, he's the guy's pretty dull compared to Trump. He's not like a showman or
No.
Love him or loathe him. Trump is entertaining, and
Yeah.
I think his charisma garners attention, and so I do quite feel that there is a cult of personality and following off the back of that, which is very centered around Donald Trump. I don't think it will necessarily continue beyond him.
It's definitely a factor. I mean, I think that there's a mixture. I mean, I do definitely think that one factor is the man that is Donald Trump. But I think the fact that you can see in so many other places, like in the UK, for example, with people like Boris Johnson, Nigel Farage, I would argue that it is also a factor is, I wouldn't blame institutions. I would blame social media. I think to understand why social media is so powerful, you have to look at the brain and the way your brain was built and evolved. Because in your brain, you have the hippocampus, which was the oldest part of the brain, which is almost like in the center. And as the brain has evolved, it's almost like built up layers around it. And you got like the prefrontal cortex and different parts. So when you look at the prefrontal cortex and different parts of the brain, you might be dealing with like logic and complex thought and those sorts of things. But when you go back to the hippocampus, that's where you've got the deep-rooted things which are instinctual, they're emotional, and they've been there a long time. And the thing is about the hippocampus is it's so powerful. Like you've got feelings of love, you've got feelings of like anger, all of these things, and that's more powerful than logic. At the end of the day, it just is, because the way our brains are hardwired, like we put priority on those things, especially in the short term. Now, because of social media and the way social media has taken over, you now have short form content, 30-second reels of Trump like giving speeches and little reels, and you're just swiping through and people talking about immigrants and these sorts of things. And because the brain is hardwired, then we're obviously going to be more focused on getting angry at those things and supporting someone that just in the short term is speaking to those almost ancient I can't say that word, but the pre-evolved us. How, as a society, we change that and sort of fix going from the short-term emotional side to actually think about what helps us in the long term. I'm not sure. I think that is a difficult.
I agree. I think that's really relevant. One thing I do think about social media, I would say, fans the flames of everything, and it allows. It's a really an incredible way of getting short messages out and creating opinions that I think largely based on anger, fear, but they don't always portray it that way. But one thing I feel, and you've comparing this to earlier periods in history, like the 20s and 30s, when when there was a massive economic depression. I think a lot of what we've seen has come around from the fact that, particularly in the Western developed worlds, and the US is a bit different right now, but there's still a perception that the economy is not great. That economic dislocation that people feel, and then the pressure that they feel, is a big source of why people are willing to back a movement like Brexit or like Trump or other disruptors, because they feel things aren't going well for them. They don't feel like it's good. When the economy is booming, the fear evaporates a bit, because you're like, well, life's good.
Yeah.
My income is growing every year. I managed to buy a nice house. I've got a nice car. My kids can do better than I'm doing. But all these things are being challenged in our world. And, I would say in the developed countries, since the global financial crash of 2007, that there's never really been any return to growth. And I think that's created a lot of the problems that we see in the world today. And until we see a real return to economic prosperity, I think that kind of appeal of fear, of hate, of just wanting to shake up and blame what people perceive to be elites will continue.
Mm. Yeah, no, that's a super interesting point, and I think you're right, and it a part of it as well is even though is wealth inequality in the sense that even though perhaps with AI, like stock markets are going up crazy amounts for AI, you're not seeing that in real
So,
terms
yeah,
for 99% of the population. So
totally. Mm.
it's not for them, as you said, it's almost like in that time of volatility in a personal life, if like personal finances sort of situation,
Um,
they choose that volatility as you talked about, rather than the nice stable
yeah,
leader that they know is
yeah,
going to stay consistent with their lifestyle.
yeah, exactly. Who's Trump interested in? Is he may appeal to a base that some of them are pretty, ordinary, not well off and feel marginalized, but who's he really helping? It's a much smaller proportion of society.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we're coming towards the end, so just the final like questions for you before we finish up. What do you think the next few years of your life looks like? Well, what are you hoping for from life? Obviously, you moved to Australia. Do you have any
Mm.
sort of things that you're looking to get from life in the next few years?
I guess first of all, being in Australia is great. Loving life down here is a great place to live. I think certainly compared to the UK, it's got I think a lot more optimism about it as a country. It's not without its challenges, but it does feel a younger country, a country that's I say more forward looking, more optimistic for sure than the UK. So yeah, very much plan to stay here. I think that over the next few years, there will come a point where it's from a career perspective where I will have to have a think about what I want to do next or will need to do next. I think there's still ageism in the workplace, and yeah, when you get to your kind of mid-50s, despite all I was saying earlier about us living and being younger in our outlook in our ways for a lot longer, I do think you still have to then be cognizant of the fact that there's a younger generation coming up behind you that wants its opportunity and chance, and you need to give way. So I think I've got an answer to it right now, Zach, but I will over the next couple of years probably try and take a bit of time to think about what I want to do next. Is it something completely different? Oh, yeah, possibly, but that what that is, I don't know as yet. So I need to give it some more thought.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for coming on. I've had a fantastic time talking about all the things we
Oh,
have.
you're welcome. It's been very very enjoyable just chatting through a whole range of topics. So yeah, thanks for inviting me onto your Off the Tangent podcast.
Excellent, thank you, and hopefully to get you on in the future again and get you more thoughts on any of the other topics we can talk about. I'm sure there's a lot of other things.
Brilliant.
All right,
Thanks,
well,
Zach.
thanks a lot.
Have a great